Okay. Comments, questions, confusions that anybody wants to share? Or not. If you want to keep them to yourself. Yeah.
Deacons also. I am working as an electrician down at the St. Clair County Correctional Center. And that's one of the biggest things I see down there is and it's mentally at this place. But, and also what's interesting about the correctional center, that used to be the Assumption High School, Catholic Assumption High School in East St. Louis. Now it's the prison, which it hasn't changed much. So I need to break into the guards and all of the security that's there. So those are the ones that I want to reach out to. In fact, I am actually speaking. We have a guard that when we do work there, we have to go around. The guards have to be with us. And so as far as evangelizing, listening to, obviously, praying about it, and that's what I do. I pray, how can I ask these guys to quit cussing so much? These are the guys on the outside that come in and bring, I said, these are the only things that these prisoners get to listen to, is your language. And I guess I just was looking for maybe some ideas on strengthening. Besides just through prayer, is there something to give me more strength, to be more courageous, to evangelize to these guys?
Okay. Deacon Greg's the expert in cussing, so we're going to
WT. WTF.
Go ahead, Greg.
Personally, I have absolutely zero experience with the prison ministry or being in prison myself. I haven't done time, so I can't really tell you. I think, from my own experience in the secular realm, I think the best thing you can do is to try and set an example and set a tone, and quietly let them know that there are some things that you will tolerate and some things that are appropriate and some things that you think aren't. And that one of the ways for them to improve the quality of life for the people who are there and make them better citizens is to maybe try and refrain from that. But it's, essentially setting an example and trying to set a tone yourself of personal behavior and hope that they'll play along.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay, way in the back there. Go ahead.
I'm curious about your concept of the moratorium for a year or so. As I'm understanding it, you're suggesting that it would be nice to stop the deacon mill, at least for a time, to reconsider our candidate selection and formation and continuing formation even for the, but assuming that the ordinaries are not going to spring for that, what's plan B? What can we do among ourselves and for others to encourage a more thoughtful selection process, rather than just do more body mentality?
Yeah, and plan B, I think, would be that the formators get together and they take maybe like a moderator with them, maybe another deacon director, and they go on a nice, silent, directed retreat. And over the course of a year, maybe 3 times a year, they'll meet at a retreat house for a weekend or so, and they'll listen to what God wants to say to them about their program, about the fruits of their program, about what may be something that was beneficial 40 years ago but isn't beneficial now, something that's not working. And then you can go to the bishop after this year of retreat and say, here's what we've been praying about and thinking about, and do you think we can implement some of these changes as the fruit of our retreat? That would be plan B if he didn't allow a moratorium. Anything else?
If I could add just one small thing, something that struck me when you were talking about the whole moratorium concept. A phrase that I hear a lot, and I know you probably heard it too, and one of the convocation, I talked about speaking at a convocation in Ohio a few years ago, and the theme of the convocation for the priests was moving from maintenance to mission. And I think a chronic problem that we have in a lot of dioceses and a lot of formation programs is that we are in a maintenance mode. Mm-hmm. And we need to segue and change our thinking into more of a mission mode, and defining what a mission is, what the mission will be for your particular diocese, and for the men, and what you want and what you need. And I think part of this moratorium year is defining that. But if you can get the culture of the diocese to change and think differently about how the parishes operate and what they need and what they want and what they're looking for in vocations, that's a big part of that. Mm-hmm. But again, it has to be an intentional effort and something very conscious and a pretty bold choice on the part of the people in charge.
Yeah, the way we've always done things sometimes is called the mission.
Yeah.
So we need an injection of imagination. And that's, can disrupt people, but I think that's what I'm really calling for, is a new way of dreaming and thinking about the diaconate. What would be a way that forms the men in response to the way the culture is today, and also what ministries are neglected. The way I always like to say it is, where has the ministry of the bishop yet to reach? Well, that's where deacons should be. But in order for us to see where the ministry of the bishop has yet to reach, we need that kind of sacramental imagination. It has to be fostered in us. We may be missing ministerial opportunities because we're in a slot that we're doing things the way we've always done them. Right. So who's being left out? Who's not hearing the gospel? Where is it not being proclaimed? Should be forming the next generation of deacons to pay attention to those people, or those marginalized folks in the diocese who've yet to hear the gospel. So even just asking that question opens up our imagination. We begin to think of people that perhaps we haven't reached yet.
Something else that Father Sean touched on this a little bit, and I think it speaks to a larger problem that is pretty pervasive in our church. It is the idea that we only have deacons because we don't have enough priests. And he was encouraging we have to build up diaconate vocations because we don't have enough priests. Okay, but that's not really why we need deacons. That's, a part of it, yes. But there is so much more to who we are and what we are. And I think a huge problem in priestly formation is that the theology or a theological understanding of the diaconate is sorely missing. And they see us as the helpers of the priest, and they don't really have much of an imagination to see beyond that or to understand the impulse behind Vatican II that brought us back into existence, which was happening before there was a shortage of priests. So that speaks to a whole other problem that is kind of vexing the church and figuring out what to do with us.
Yeah, I think the diaconate will mature when priestly formation about the diaconate matures.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the back there.
Just to make a comment, I remember when I went through formation, there was when they started the diaconate after World War II, there was no criteria, there's no set a curriculum like you have for the priests. And we were constantly in an evolving state. And our class we always would get this course, well, this is the first time we've done this with you. This is the first time we've done this one with you. Come to the point where we're getting tired of being guinea pigs. And we heard after, or the other classes were doing the same thing. So I don't think, I'm wondering if the diaconate has evolved enough to the point that we're teaching men across the country the same way in all dioceses. Because I know in ours, every class was different. The spirituality, I believe, was there, but so was the other stuff. So they really, the church doesn't know how to handle us in some cases, or how to teach us, I guess. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I would say that I've always been an advocate for, it looks like sometimes they've modeled diaconal formation after seminary. And like we're supposed to be a mini seminary, cramming in seminary stuff on Tuesday nights or weekends. And that's part of the moratorium I would like to call for, is that, no, we don't have to study the same thing priests study. I look at the new directory and I say, this is kind of ridiculous, the amount of courses or themes that they want us to study. I have a doctorate in theology. I've been a deacon for 25, almost 30 years. I can count on one hand anybody who's asked me a theological question. They ask you about the homily you gave. They ask you to help with their marriage. They ask you to pray for them and bless them. If I was going to be a deacon, I certainly don't need a doctorate in theology. What kind of theological education does a deacon need? Well, let's think about that. Exactly, what kind of studies would make him competent regarding the mission and the ministries he has to do? It's a lot less than a priest, perhaps. And sometimes they even think priests need less. They have a Master of Divinity degree, it's 130 credits over 4 years. It's ridiculous the way they make them run around in the seminary. Busy, busy, busy. I have called for seminaries to just offer MAs in theology, period. 45 to 70 credits over 4 years, give them the time they need for that healing, for that contemplative prayer, for that human formation. And that's certainly an educated man. A man with a master's degree can go on for a doctorate. No one's going to say he doesn't have an education. So this MDiv degree is an incredibly difficult elephant to get rid of. And then they tried to say, well, let's kind of cram some of that stuff into diaconal formation. No, we can have our own model. We should have our own model of academic and intellectual formation. And that would be part, I think, of this national moratorium. Let's rethink the curriculum. We don't need all that.
You spoke about the culture, and I was just curious of, you spoke about healing, and I'm just curious of what does to heal from the culture, can you speak more about that, maybe how we want to go about that, and what does that look like? And also think that with Greg, with your experience in the media, that you might have a lot to say about that as well. So I'd just like to hear some more thoughts about that.
Yeah, so as always, Greg is the problem. Yeah, it's the media, the superficiality of the media. So part of the difficulty, I think, is the values that have come into the masculine world that have kept us boys. And a boy does certain things that a man doesn't do. And the trajectory of a man is self-sacrificial love, self-donation. And the trajectory of the boy is to please himself. So there's a lot of boys running around America today. And that's part of the healing, the emotional healing that's needed. Could be due to bad role models at home, dad's not there, or dad himself is immature, and the boy never got some kind of role model for self-sacrificial or self-donative love. You hear this a lot from women complaining. Can't find a good husband. He's self-involved. He doesn't know how to give himself. He doesn't know how to think of others. A narcissism. So we find that kind of throughout the culture, and that's part of the healing that needs to be present. Now, in the seminaries today, we have a big focus on psychology. And a lot of seminarians are in therapy because they're American boys. And in some of the cases of diaconal formation, guys in their 30s and 40s who are coming in, they are still boys, emotionally. They haven't reached an affective maturity yet because they've been playing around in the American culture. And one of the things that I think we're going to need in the future, so I just said we may not need to follow a seminary curriculum, but I think diaconal formation is going to have to start following seminaries by having therapists more available. Good Catholic therapists who have a good Catholic anthropology as their foundation. Because I think there are a lot of deacon candidates that are coming in the same immaturity, emotional immaturity, that need some healing during our formation years. Does that make sense? Okay.
One of the things I've encountered, I haven't done this for a few years, but for many years when I was in Brooklyn, I was working with a tribunal on annulments. How many of you are involved doing that? Okay, so you'll be able to understand a little of this. One of the things I found, again, and this goes to what you were saying about the culture, one of the things I found again and again and again is you hear the same stories over and over again about why marriages didn't work out, why they failed. They got married too young. They got married to get away from their parents. They came from a broken home or an abusive home or an addictive home, and they repeated the same habits that they saw at home in their own marriage. They never learned how to fight constructively. They never saw a healthy marriage modeled for them. One of the things I don't quite know how to correct this in the culture, but we do need to heal from it in the culture, is learning how to get over that. And learning how to get over all the problems that so many people grew up with and that they keep imitating and replicating. And this is one of the reasons why so many marriages fail, is people don't know what it's like to live in the middle of a happy home with a good, constructive, healthy marriage, let alone a good, healthy Catholic marriage. That's something that has been lost on us, and 50% of our marriages are ending in divorce. For a variety of reasons, and we need to heal from that and help others to heal from that also.
You talked about mission before. One of the things maybe we should all pray about as deacons is, can we develop new creative pre-marriage prep programs? Some of them are very superficial again, and they're not responding to the current needs, like Greg was saying about families and the emotional problems, and you can't have a marriage without a healed person. The foundation will be very, very weak. What kind of Catholic anthropology should be at the heart of marriage prep? What kind of spirituality should be at the heart of marriage prep so the Trinity can heal them? And then what type of psychological input should be at the heart of marriage prep so that the instruments of therapy can heal them? What deacon wants to step up and begin to create a new form of marriage prep? After all, we have the privilege of living in marriage, most of us, and there's a certain expertise that we have and a certain gravitas that we would have if we would step forward and in all creativity start rethinking how we do marriage prep. We all know it's a scandal. It's superficial. It doesn't really reach what needs to be reached. And so that would be an area where when I say, well, I wonder where the ministry of the bishop has yet to reach. That's one area that we could really imagine together.
One of the things I'd like to discuss is, Greg, you made the comment that formation is continuous. And one of the things the directory said was that there has to be ongoing formation for deacons, and a lot of times that's at least 20 hours a year. And what I found in the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. is there's a program there where multiple offerings are made throughout the year, but there doesn't seem to be any malice aforethought, any theme that's going through, anything that they're trying to accomplish with this year's continuing education program. It seems like it's one-off. And there's no continuity toward this. Has anyone thought through how to implement and what this continuing education should be and how it should be done in different dioceses around the country so there's a model for it?
I think you answered your own question.
I'm sure there are good models. You know, some of you guys could probably tell the model you use, but it's the same with priests too. There's a mandate for them for ongoing formation, but it's like pulling teeth. And the same when we set up, it's like pulling teeth to get deacons to come. But that's because we haven't developed this culture of ongoing formation. I always think that if we would lessen the academic load during formation, push it into ongoing formation, have more of the healing and contemplation and spirituality and liturgical training in formation, then we would feel that lack and deacons would want to know more. And so we could push that out onto ongoing formation, especially if we attached it to some type of penalty. I mean, we all know the human spirit is weak. So no, you can't preach. You did not do your 20 hours this year. Sorry, buddy. And there has to be some desire on the man's part to keep in developing his theological imagination. We know that without a good theological imagination, homilies really suffer. So it's sort of a dereliction of duty not to keep reading and not to keep thinking. And it may be scattershot. I don't know. Maybe you're just talking. I just actually did a Zoom for your diocese. Were you thinking about me when you said that? It's like, why did you drag this Keating guy in, this ad hoc conversation?
That was to sell your book.
That's right. My wife needs more Big Macs. Ongoing formation is about broken human nature. And I don't know how we're going to fix that. But we need, again, more conversation, more imagination about getting more people to do ongoing formation. I mean, the organization we're with right now pulls its hair out to try and get deacons to come every summer. I think there are more than 100 deacons in the United States. So where are they? And who's doing their ongoing formation?
You were talking about marriage formation. My wife and I worked with Retrobite for many years. If you're going to do formation for marriages, do a weekend there first and hear the problems that couples have in their marriage and the suffering that they're going through. Then you can bring that home.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, go to Retrobite. You'll see all the wounds, and then make a program that prevents or heals the wounds. Way in the back.
So you kind of struck a chord with this one.
No one ever seen you stand up? Never heard that before. You kind of struck a chord with marriage fest. My wife and I kind of worked with that a lot. And it's kind of bothered me over the years where it just seems like it's getting more wishy-washy. And now when we start taking a look at married couples and things like that, it kind of gets out of the hands about it. There's some structure to it. We don't know what they're talking about, this, that, or the other thing. But if you had your druthers trying to set one up, would you set it up on the maybe John Paul II's theology of the body? How would you set up a good marriage prep program with couples?
Definitely. I mean, and John Paul's theology of the body is Catholic anthropology. So that would be part of it. And then, of course, a good understanding of a communication as always, as intimacy. Because without without the trust of the self-revelation, some of our greatest mystics have defined love as mutual self-revelation. So if we don't form couples in trusting mutual self-revelation, then there's no intimacy. There's no adhesive to the relationship. So it's communication that is the adhesive. So the anthropology, the sexual understanding of openness to life, fertility, communication, mutual prayer and spirituality. Oh, I want to be a deacon. Oh, do you guys pray? We say grace. Okay, I think we need a little more. So maybe in marriage prep, a deeper understanding of how to communicate intimately with God. If you can talk to your wife and achieve intimacy through self-revelation, you can pray. If you pray, you can talk to your wife. It's the same mechanism, but we have to teach them how to do that. So I think those would be the most important. And forgiveness, right? Retrobite, forgiveness, always forgiveness, right? Teach them that. They don't know that. Great book that came out recently by Father Tom Berg, B-E-R-G. Best book I ever read on forgiveness. It'd be great if you're doing couples retreats or you're doing marriage prep. Tom Berg, B-E-R-G. Because I'm old, I can't remember the title, but I remember the author. So just look up Tom Berg, any book on forgiveness. He only wrote one. And I think he wrote it with a psychologist called Dr. Luck, L-U-C-K. I think that was his last name. Yes?
Just a warning about marriage prep. We had a couple who only talked about the loving aspects of marriage, not the real life. Have any of you never had an argument? Or that's part of what they do, how to care for each other, and have a better understanding. The major reason for marriage breakup is one thing: communication. If they were communicating in all aspects, there wouldn't be a problem in marriage.
You don't have an argument if your wife's always right. That's the secret.
In our archdiocese of Milwaukee, many of the men that are coming out of the seminary have a different approach to the liturgy. It's a much more traditional. You're starting to see the communion rails coming back, the patens. I spoke to the president of the seminary. He said the young men coming in have such a more passion for the liturgy, the mystery. And this is going on all over the world, that it's not just Milwaukee alone, but that reverence for the mystery. I listen to what you're saying about being more compassionate and how important the liturgy is. Do you see what's happening in the world, and do you see what you're advocating for? It's kind of following that same movement of the Holy Spirit to, I guess, bring out the mystery and appreciate the mystery. And before you answer, I just want to say to this gentleman right here that I was starting formation in 2012. And we had the benefit of having the deacons that were ordained 20 years that had no examples for them. But so we appreciate so much having that portion already painted before we started. So that must have been hard for you, but you made it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say about the mystery is that there was a tendency ecclesially to downplay the supernatural. And now we're seeing a response to that. Not a good idea. We don't want to downplay. Because if you vacate the supernatural from the church, you're left with the political or the sociological. And we don't need God for that. So you're always going to get a backlash when you drain out the supernatural from our church. Because after a while, the political and the sociological and even the psychological are not substantial nourishment. And we cry out for God. There's a beautiful video when John Paul went to Poland under the communist regime. And there must have been 1 million people in the square. And he's standing on the altar with his staff. And the crowd just starts yelling, "We want God." Over and over again. We're getting very close to that in the United States. And the little microcosm ways that some seminarians or priests are trying to symbolize that would be, let's maybe kneel when we receive Holy Communion, or let's, do something else, whatever. It's an attempt to say there's more than the political, the sociological, and the psychological. And we shouldn't be ashamed of the supernatural. And even as deacons, never be ashamed of the supernatural. Somebody starts telling you a problem, you go back to the prison ministry, you're there, the guards are cursing, and maybe at one point you just say, are you angry? Is there something you want me to pray with you for? Can we pray right now? and you bless the guard, and you call down the supernatural. You're ordained. You're in holy orders. You're the veil between the supernatural and the natural. Break the veil. Bring the supernatural more to the fore. Don't be ashamed of it. And I think that's one of Satan's most powerful weapons, is that I don't want to mention God. I don't want to mention Jesus. I don't want to pray. No, do it, because the soul is hungering for it. So I think that there is a movement. I see it in many seminaries, and I see it in the young men who are healed and matured, that they have the courage. The prison guard was saying he wanted to pray for courage. They have the courage to be supernatural in public. We need that.
Just bouncing off of that, I had an interesting experience a few years ago when I was working for CNEWA. Part of my job was traveling around the country giving pulpit talks, introducing people to the Catholic Near East Welfare Association and hopefully getting them to want to donate. One of the places where I spoke was a parish in, I think it was called Center City in Pennsylvania, right in the heart of Pennsylvania. It's coal country. They had two churches. One was a very modern church, and another one was an old traditional church, one pastor. And he decided that in the older traditional church, he was going to do Mass in English, but ad orientem. And he wanted me to know that going into this. And I said, well, I've never done Mass ad orientem. What do I do? And he said, it's no problem. It's nothing complicated. It's not that difficult. He explained, what we do, where we turn around, yada, yada, yada. So we went and did the Mass, and everything was fine. And after Mass, I asked the guy who was traveling with me what he thought. He was a Methodist. He worked for CNEWA in our development department. He travels all over the country with me. He's been to a gazillion Masses. And he'd never seen one like this. And I asked him, what did you think? And he said, it was amazing. I've never seen anything like that before. And what made the difference for him, getting to the sense of the supernatural and mystery, he said when the priest elevated the host, that was the first time you saw it. He hadn't been facing the congregation. His back was to the congregation. You didn't see the elements. And suddenly at the consecration, he raised the host, and he said it gave him chills. He was amazed and very moved by it. People want that. People want that experience more and more. And I think we as a church are becoming aware of that after, sort of brushing that aside for a long time, that people want something that is transcendent, and they want something that is going to take them out of the everyday and the ordinary. And so we're seeing this, turning away from churches that look like airline terminals and churches that really look like churches now, and a different form of practicing, or a more reverent traditional form of practicing our faith and our liturgy is really resonating with people. And we're seeing it. Pope Leo has been doing some of this himself. And I think he is gently reinforcing the idea that there are a lot of different ways for us to be a church and to celebrate our liturgies, and this is one that we should not abandon.
And even in our little way as deacons, that when I was first ordained, there was some ridiculous comments that you shouldn't wear a dalmatic because it builds up your ego or something. No, that's the common vesture. And it also carries a higher supernatural element to it, like the priest's full vestments. So if you're still in a parish that won't buy you a dalmatic, maybe address that. And there's some leftover, at least liturgically, in some parishes there might be some leftover sentiment that, the stole's good enough for you guys. No, that's not our proper ordinary vesture. And we should be properly vested to point to the supernatural, to point to the transcendent. Nobody looks like that on the street. So we must be in a different place. Oh, we must be in heaven. And that's the point of the vestments. So we should ask for them until we get them.
You won't see a priest celebrating Sunday Mass in just an Alban stole.
Except a Jesuit. But we'll
or, if
move on.
or if the air conditioning is broken and it's 105 degrees outside, maybe.
Okay, anything else? We're done? Okay. Yeah, in the front.
I'm Max Roder, a two-time past president. One of the things, I'm from Fairborn, Ohio, and we're doing a thing called Deacons of Life. And we now have 6 parishes that are one family. St. Michael got no family parishes. Started about 3 years ago, and I walked in and we had the covered chalice. And I haven't seen that in 60 years. I had no idea what to do with it. And Father Ambrose was kind enough to show me during the offertories how to unpack it and what to do. But he also had the fiddleback vestments, chasuble and dogmatic.
That's it.
And I don't like the vestments, but I like the fact we dress the same.
Sure.
And I think that's part of what you're getting at, is that we have the same vestments on.
Thank you
I don't like the fiddleback, it's back to the 50s. But they are matching vestments and we look identical. And for that, I'm very grateful that he has a full set of the dogmatics and the chasubles to go with it.
Great.
So for us, when we celebrate, I feel very comfortable in having matching. Because I think that's important that we do match.
Yes. Good.
Well, that really says that in one of these books on Deacon and Math.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. I just got word that the name of that book I couldn't remember was called Choosing Forgiveness. Choosing Forgiveness. Okay, Greg, ready?
Yeah.
All right. God bless you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
I want to get a picture. I want to get a picture. This is for the blog.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Perfect. Beautiful background. There we go.
You look so religious.
Good
to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.